Hello, hello. Thank you for coming, Mr. Jermanji, for our conversation with one another. I'm super glad to be able to talk to you. It is right after Combo Breaker. We're having this conversation, and we're all super energized right now. And this is giving me a lot of energy to be able to finally do some of the production things that I really want to do for the community. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was get these things happening and really have a view that the people can see our players from without it just being like, oh yeah, that's that guy with the username and the Yoshimitsu and things like that. Just for as many of our regular players are up and coming, are hot members, so to speak. And for one, to give them an idea of the human side of you and the rest of our players, but also to give them a little bit more information about you guys as players because we're so we're so inquisitive our scene it can be difficult for us to figure out where we should go next, and so we look at our favorite players for inspiration and stuff. So if you could please tell us about yourself, introduce yourself.
I'm Jermanji, also known as Jeremiah. I'm originally from Washington State. I haven't been anywhere else in my life. Um, I enjoy the rain quite a lot, so it's going to be really different for me to have to go to Texas and deal with all of that heat. But the first experience that I had there, though, it didn't seem all that bad, but looks can be quite deceiving. I don't have a day job anymore. I'm actually out of a job right now because of my injuries with my carpal tunnel. It's just not a wise decision for me to try to seek work when I just have this wrist problem that I have to figure out how to approach it the best way. My scene is Seattle, and I represent Faustian. I used to represent Revenant, but I left because Faustian had said they would do more for me, and that was the terms that we had come up with, is that I would join Full Faust.
Interesting, interesting. I won't ask too many of the specifics on that. That sounds interesting though. So let's have that conversation about you and your main character. We know you very well for your main character choices. You have a Yoshimitsu that is surprising a lot. I'm not saying that it's surprising that you're doing well with Yoshimitsu, but Yoshimitsu is not a character that a lot of people end up seeing in top eights and final situations very often. But you're making a lot of waves with Yoshimitsu recently. And of course, you've got a Kunimitsu in the pocket as well that you put a lot of time and effort into. So I'd like to ask why you chose Yoshimitsu primarily and what really grabs you about the character's playstyle. And I also want to know what about Kunimitsu made you gravitate towards that character as well. If you could give me those two.
Certainly. So Yoshi, I played in arcade back when he had his Alien custom, and I thought he was the sickest character, just this badass like samurai ninja, whatever the case it was in that game, right? And I had told myself, because of like the uniqueness to the character with, Flea and some of his stances where he jumps on his sword or flies in the air like a helicopter, I thought that was really cool. So when when I couldn't play the arcade anymore, or I moved on from whatever Tekken game I originally started playing him as, I told myself if I ever took this game seriously, that I would be maining Yoshi. First game that started was Tag 2, and I didn't have the pleasure to just main him solely. So 7 was when I said I actually fully made that vow and just stuck to it for a very long period of time. But I just feel I have a very powerful meaning in my character. I don't just play my character, oh, it's cheap, or I like the design. I feel like it's a pretty complicated answer, but also a very meaningful answer. That makes sense. Uh, so Kuni, I actually just really like her design, and she's really fun. Like, I actually don't it happens to be that she's really good, yeah, but I never played either of my characters and picked them up and thinking, "Oh my god, this character's a powerhouse," or "This character is really cheap, so I'm gonna play them." Whenever I have played a character, it's always had a pretty big, meaningful purpose, and it's the same way with Kuni. It's just, it's not just, very simple cut and dry, as I would put it.
So you said that there's a complex, complicated answer as to why you play Yoshimitsu, but you mentioned, you said you like the aesthetic, you like some of his stances, and you say that's really cool, but you didn't really mention what about the character's play style really grabs you, and not just from the perspective of somebody that goes, I think I might play this character. We're talking about you've been playing this character for years now, and you've stuck with it for all this time. What has caused you to really stick it out with the character?
I just generally enjoy the character. I like that he's difficult. I like his stances. I really like his Oki. Um, there's just everything about the characters. So it's like when you think about tiers and characters and all these other types of things, most people gravitate who's good, who and not really who's fun and something I enjoy with. Like I see this with a lot of characters, where a lot of players where they just like, oh, I'm playing this character because of this reason. It's not necessarily because they enjoy it. As with me, it's I enjoy it and I enjoy his complexity. Like I really don't think I'd have nearly as much fun playing Yoshi if he was easy and brain dead, personally. But I think my favorite stance has got to be Kensho, for sure. That's one of the main things that really keeps me playing him and just really enjoying playing him, just in general against anyone.
Why
But
Kincho's stance specifically?
I just like how it operates and how you have to play with it, and with the changes, and especially the new low is a big gravitation for me because I think his new low is pretty good, and I like bowling people with it, and I like putting people through all these different blenders and different mind games with Ken Ford One Cancel. But but I couldn't tell you specifically why I first started liking it. I just kept expanding on different ideas, with more complexity, and just started seeing myself put it more and more into my game.
Cool, cool. Um, so like we've said, you said that you were playing Yoshimitsu in Tag 2,
Mhm.
and you couldn't solely play Yoshimitsu. First of all, who did you play else in Tag 2? I know Yoshimitsu was really good as an assist in Tag 2, but who else did you play in Tag 2?
A lot of people actually don't know this, but I originally had picked up Leo in that game, and Leo was my secondary. And when the switch happened with Seven, like I said, I commit to the vow, but also I had realized at some point when I had tried to go back to her that Yoshi had just been miles ahead of her, and it seemed way too difficult to get back into playing her. And I would have had to sink a lot of time into the investment of getting her to where Yoshi was at the time.
Hmm. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So, when would you say you started your competitive drive towards playing Tekken? The the you know the little switch that said this right here is what's gonna what told me I'm gonna take this seriously, or was it like it was it Tekken 7 when it came out, when you really started going down that journey, and what was that journey like to get you to where you are now as a competitor? Because you've just blossomed into a consistent competitor. And with Yoshimitsu, that's really, really hard because of the tools. You've mentioned it, he's difficult. The tools, there are so many tools, but you manage. And I was just talking to Reggie, dude with hoodie, about this the other day. That you managed to take the majority of tools that he has and go and say, these are my major game plan tools, and you just stick with those consistent tools. And it's so interesting how you can basically win with 5 to 7 buttons. And they tell you that you can do that with characters, and then other people are like, nah, there's more to it than that. But you know, we see you with those forward 1+2, Kincho forward 1, CD ones, down forward 2s, spin into, whatever needs to be. Like, we see you doing with so much with so little. Even though Yoshimitsu has so much, you choose to really bring it down. Anyway, that was kind of a tangent. I want to say how interesting I find it as a Yoshimitsu player that's played lots of Yoshimitsu players that are all over the place and have lots of different styles that they try to bring in all at the same time. So back to my original question, uh, what got you started in competing, and what led you up to where you are here?
Well, it's that's quite the question, honestly. Because the thing was, I didn't really start taking it super seriously, competitive offline tournaments, and really going to tournaments, all that type of stuff, until probably mid to getting closer to the end of Tag Two. Um, and it happened where just one of my friends, where I finally hit up Seattle Tekken, finally went offline, got my ass kicked, and wanted to start doing better to not get my ass kicked, because the thing that was really driving me was I really like to win and I hated to lose. And I also had an anger problem, and whenever I lost, it really was like a pretty big impact for just anyone around me. And that's, I think, what really just kick-started it. And I asked questions to try and get better and winning, because whenever I had a challenge in front of me, whatever the case, it drove me to want to do things. Back in Tag 2, I was labbing probably 8 hours a day at one point, and I was just trying to work on all the things that Silence would tell me, after our first five, or after we would play casuals or whatever the case. And he told me, "Oh, well, this needs to be fixed. This needs to be fixed." And then I'd be like, "All right, bet. Let's start trying to fix that." But I took it way too seriously, where I just didn't, where I enjoyed the lab so much that I didn't even play the game anymore. And that was one of the mistakes I definitely made. But I would just say that the want to win so often really got me really got me started. Problem was, though, and I think this very deeply, especially because of the experiences I had with this so much, is only wanting to win and not being able to enjoy the game when you lose is a very double-edged sword. And that is where I started. It took me a very long time and a much needed break after Bud Light, that I realized that I'm playing this game to learn and grow, and that's where I have the most fun. And I don't like being nearly as angry as I was, because back in Tag 2 days, and even a good majority of Tekken 7, I thought I was better than 80% of the people in the game, and I felt like me losing, and I can admit this now even though it sounds bad, that I'd make excuses. I'd be like, "Oh, they didn't beat me, they didn't outplay me." And nowadays, if I get beat, um I'm just like, "Okay, I got outplayed, it happens." Most of the time, no one's perfect, so sometimes people have their slide backs and they fall back on maybe that old mentality or mindset of thinking. But most of the time, I try to make it a priority that I'm looking at the moon and not the finger. I'm looking at a goal that is not only healthy and is not only enjoyable, but just something that stays far away from the being in a dark space in my head, where I'm just angry all the time and I'm not enjoying myself.
That's really relatable. Very relatable. I think we've all thought at some point, after having a rough day, and you come home and you play Tekken, and you go and you get on a losing streak, and you're like, bah. But then there are other days where you go home and you play Tekken and you get like 9 games in a row, and you're like, dang, this game is fun when I win, right? And then it creates that mentality
Mhm.
where it's very uh, uh, prophesy, or the prophecy gets fulfilled by itself, self-fulfilling prophecies, where if you feel like if you're going to lose you're not going to have a good time, then you're just not even going to play. A lot of times I have friends of mine that have that mindset, and I think we've all been through that mindset and come in and out. You were talking about how like everybody has backslides and stuff too. Like even me, sometimes I'm like, you know I want to do this first to five or first to 10 with somebody, but it's like, oh, but what if I get 10 0'd? What if I lose or something like that? And it's just so easy to have the fear of loss. And so I totally understand that. And also with the idea that, well, I just don't want to lose anymore, so I'm going to get better, so I stop losing. I feel like that a lot with my friends, where people are asking me, they're like, so why do you compete? What's your goal, Tony? And I'm like, my goal is to just not get beat by my friends all the time. For the most part, my goal is when I enter a bracket, I go, I can get somewhere in this bracket. And then once I have an obstacle in my way, like for example, just a spirit, I still haven't beaten him in bracket yet. And so he's like my tournament demon. Once I get to that point where I'm like, this is an obstacle that I've gotten over, I can get past that mental block. And not to say that I have to get the win in order to get over the mental block, because we play casuals all the time. And well, maybe not all the time, but we play casuals pretty regularly. And it's not like I can't get 2 games in a row on him ever or something like that, right? It's just me feeling that tournament pressure. And sometimes I'll go out of tournament and just be like, oh man, I just lost. And then it's hard for me to do things like commentate afterwards. So like it's it's good to have that mindset that you're talking about. And I know you and I talk about this a lot as a teacher student relationship, where we got to focus on the growth. And it's very interesting to hear that that's one of the things that you got started with, that was one of your kickstarters.
Yeah, it definitely was because I was looking at it every day, and and the 2 or 3 month break that I took really had me reflect on the fact of like how angry I was and how much fun I was really having. Like what was making me really enjoy the game. And nowadays, like I actually enjoy learning more than winning tournaments. And some people, I have a friend out there who's told me that, if you can win $300, why wouldn't you go with the route that would make you win more? And I told him, well, I want the path to be hard. If you're beating my Yoshi up and, you're doing what you need to do, I want to see why. I want to keep practicing to improve that result of that not happening as much. Like, sure, I could play Cooney and I could choose an easier path, but then I feel like that can lead me into relying on the fact of Cooney saving me when I should be just picking Yoshi and grinding through it. I don't want to build the success rate of me having to rely on another character to beat certain people. Anything is good in moderation, I say, but once you're taking it past that, the gauge is at like 80 to 100%, you're now building bad habits and things that like you fall back on. And instead of them being tools or things that you do sometimes, they're now crutches that just keep you from falling.
Yeah, and keeping you from creating good habits.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
you know, and like I genuinely like I can talk about a lot. I just genuinely enjoy growth. I enjoy these close matches. I harp on things and my losses sometimes, but it has nothing to do with the fact that I lost. It has to do with the fact that like I didn't play as well as I wanted to, and I knew I could have played well. I knew that I could have done what I needed to do, and it might even not result in me winning. Like there's sometimes that I want revenge versus people, like but like I want just another shot to show the world and show myself that I can do it you know? Like when I fought Gen, I knew I could have done 10 times better if I in that set. And I just knew it. And so like I've been hungry and thinking about, man, I want that run back. And not because I'm salty at like, him and losing. It's more the fact of it's that hungry thing of like, if you know you can do 10 times better, you want to prove to yourself and others that you can.
That's fair. And I watched that set. It was just small things that we all everybody in the Yoshi Discord were talking and we were like, "Oh man, he totally had that set." Like you were so if not for a couple of things, right? And you say it yourself. You know the things you've looked back at it, I'm sure, and you know some of the places and yeah, that growth is what we're talking about here.
Hmm.
Let's move on here so that we can make sure that we get through as much information and stuff about you as we can. Do you have a training partner, Jeremiah? I have a theory about the process of growth and being a useful competitor. And I think that having a successful competitor, and I think that having a training partner that is uh, consistently there to be able to beat your bad habits and drill them out of you is a really good idea as a competitor. And I'm not what I would consider a competitor, but first of all, I want to know, do you have a training partner? And if so, what kinds of things do you do with that training partner that you focus on or have focused on in the past?
Um, so two of my training partners, actually I'll say three, is Kaiser, Be Bias, Chenzo. With Chenzo, I have focused on dealing with his style in a much more slower paced way and trying to like deal with how much he dishes out when I don't feel like he needs to, and gather that information and then just play in a slower way. Because I think when you play slow against people that play really fast or they give you a lot of information to deal with, you can turn the tables on them really big, and you can just kind of download them. But that takes a lot of consistency and practice. It's something I practice with him. But one thing, though, I will say about Be Bias is this is something that me and have talked about a lot. And I'm just like, dude, I know I can do way better. Like, you're just freeing me up. And I'm just getting mad. And he's just like, Jerry, like, we're just sparring, dude. Like, it just, like, accept the fact that, like, you're losing right now and just try to do your best. And I'm just like, dude, like, it shouldn't. And, like, I'm just, like, freaking out. And, he's just like, dude, like, it's not that big of a deal. And this is something I meant about the slide backs, and we're not really going back to that question, but this is like a slide back I have is not accepting consistent mistakes when I know I'm fighting a training partner or I'm fighting a high enough level player that like better to do this shit, you know. And that's one thing that I work a lot with him is that like I'll message him and we'll be talking and we'll talk after, and we just talk a lot about that, about the fact of this, because he's also expressed that he's had that problem as well, where he just can't accept what's in front of him. Like, oh, I just lost this round because I dropped the combo. You know, maybe that's an example of something I can't accept or whatever else. But then what ends up happening at the end of the day is I spiral down a really big hole, and it's very hard for me to get myself out of that. And then before I know it, I'm down 5 games in our training session because I kept being narrow-minded and not looking at what's surrounding me, but just wanting to hurt the person in front of me.
Yeah, like you want to get that big win coming back. I, I know what it feels like to, go down 20 games against somebody or even, more than that sometimes. And you're just like, man, if I could just get a game and you don't like sometimes you're like, I just want a game, but other times you're like, man, I want to get a really good performance and really be like, yes, this is me having adapted. This is me being like changing up what I'm doing. Because my mindset has to be flawed in some way for me to be consistently making those mistakes or not, right? that's the thought process of a lot of people. But the other side is that maybe your opponent is just adapting really well. Maybe they're having just a really good day as well, right? And it's hard to look past, I made a mistake, I'm so bad, I can't do well today, or I'm not doing well in general this month or something like that. It's really difficult, and it's it's refreshing to hear, and yet also scary to hear that a competitor your of your success has still moments like that. And it's good because we can all relate to that, but also it's scary because we all think like, eventually I'm going to get so good that I'm not going to be able to get mad at things like that. I'm not going to lose 10 games in a row to anybody, right? And after a certain point, and we can't all be Steffi Black winning 60 games against people at combo breaker casuals and stuff like that, and just have that happen all the time with everybody. It's a game, it would be no fun if we won every single time. Yeah,
Yeah.
it would be boring on the mind.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's that type of thing that I definitely want to express and say that, like, it doesn't matter, like, what level you get to. Um, Everyone is not going to be able to be their sharpest 100% of the time. It's just unrealistic to think that that's a possibility. And expecting that result isn't wise. That you think that you'll be able to always be 100%. Because if you're expecting something, you feel it's going to happen.
Yeah, well said. So let's talk about some of the other players in the scene now. I'm interested to hear your opinions on. There's a lot of people that are very high profile. You got your Red Bull sponsored people, your CLG sponsored people, Paragon sponsored people are pretty high profile right now. But I think there's a lot of people that are flying under the radar right now, and I wonder if you have somebody who comes to mind when you think of a really underrated or downplayed uh, player in the North American scene.
I know who exactly that is, and some people already think that I'm sure he's really good, but I feel he gets downplayed a lot because of the character he plays, and it's Dragon Slayer.
I knew it. I knew you was gonna say that. Keep going. Keep going.
Because Dragon Slayer, like, so the thing is this kind of this is relevant with what we're talking about because Cooney is such in a good spot. It's just kind of it's similar to Akuma, right? Well, Dragon Slayer didn't win the tournament. Cooney won the tournament. You know, and it's just like people forget that like a player's capabilities and a character are separate entities. They are not the same thing, and they should not be combined. And a lot of people combine them, and it's like, okay, well, if you're doing that, you're discrediting a character when the character is definitely that good, or even worse, you're discrediting the player. And I feel like he gets discredited a lot just because of the character he plays. And a lot of people, and this sounds pretty messed up, but like have a very closed-minded mindset when it comes to this type of thing. Like they're just like, oh well, Cooney's just that good. That's why she's winning tournaments. It's net. It doesn't feel like I don't want to say never, but it's consistently a factor where people are not looking at the player and saying, hey, maybe the pilot of the character is shining more than the character today. You know, it's not something that I see a lot. And like some people probably say, "What Dragon Slayer underrated? Like he's really good." A lot of people know that. It's like, yeah, but like then you have all these people in chat and just maybe even people and some people in general that are saying that, "Oh man, Cooney's just super strong," and then it's just implied that like you're taking away from his success because he's playing. It's like saying because an Akuma player and Akuma can 100 to 0 you with meter that like they didn't do certain things that make them stand out as a player.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to hear you say that, and you hear it all the time in the community, especially when those two characters come up on stage: Akuma, Geese, Cooney. Not really Lydia. I feel like Mama people a lot of complain about, but like you have to be a good pilot for those things. That's definitely a a big standpoint you're making right there. Um, Now, for you specifically, and I'm wondering who gives you the most trouble when you're thinking about like when you look at the bracket and you say, I see that it's possible that I'm going to play this person, and you think, oh boy, and your mind starts going a million miles a minute. Can you think of one or a few people that maybe make you think that way? And it may
Mm,
not be that way all the time, maybe even just in this time that we're thinking of right now in mid 2022, because we're all going through different stages of growth, and sometimes these players are in. So I remember when we were talking in Combo Breaker, you were like, I think I got this set. I think I have their number right now. Like you were saying that about a certain player, and
these guys are
you were like, I feel comfortable against this player right now. And so I guess I'm asking right now, who is one of those players that you look at and go, this could be a tough one.
Fee, Shadow, Joey, and currently Ty. And
Mm,
the other thing that I will mention as well, and there are definitely more people, but the other thing that I'll mention as well is that my confidence has a lot to do with how I'm feeling. Like I may feel like okay, this is going to be tough, but I might freak out and worry if like I feel like I my confidence is low and I'm not doing well. And I'm stuck doing a lot of the same stuff even though I don't have a good reason to be doing that. And but even like if I'm on my game, like I mean, I turn Fee into an anti Yoshi, so it's pretty. It's always going to be difficult when we're in bracket, and he's also expressed that he's very comfortable fighting me, which is not surprising. I mean, we've played a lot, we've trained a good bit, and like he's played against Yoshi a shit ton. So but that would be those players for sure.
what? So for me, okay, so you said Shadow, which makes a lot of sense because he's just so very strong and patient and calm and collected, and he can be very spontaneous as well. His timings are so difficult. And there's VDX, who you mentioned has a lot of knowledge from playing you a lot over the years, and you mentioned Ty. Who is the you mentioned? Oh, Joey Fury, which also I feel like needs no explanation. He's a seasoned veteran from many years and also has a lot of experience with the Yoshimitsu matchup, living near Ukiyo, having lots of ties with some other high profile Yoshimitsu players like Bisun, and he's been playing the game too long. He's very calm and collected. But Ty, I wonder what quality Ty has, and I assume that we're talking about Ty PA, Ty the Brian
Yeah.
player slash Marduk player. What quality he has that really makes you think, this could be a tough one.
He shuts down a lot of the things that I like to do. Whenever we have played, at least he's just shut down a lot of things, and he makes me have to think a lot. Like, okay, this guy knows which way to tech at the wall versus CD1. So I have to figure out and shift my thinking and be like, okay, we have to do the mix up now. Like, we need to stop doing this. We need to observe him more, all sort of type of stuff. He also makes me have to play slow and pay attention to him a lot because he likes to disrespect a lot. So it's just like things like that can be quite the challenge for me. It's he also seems to have a good amount of Yoshi knowledge as well, and like I am of the way of thinking that Yoshi verse even if you Yoshis are all different, as a lot of people like to say, I think that knowledge carries really far. And that's not to say that's a bad thing or that like, oh, that's why they're winning or whatever else. Because and even if that is, that's perfectly fine. But it just I feel like knowledge is really strong in that with Yoshi and especially. And a lot of people say, "Oh, well, that's not the case because they're all different." And it's like, well, if you have enough Yoshi knowledge, it's not going to matter too much how different they are, and it's also not going to take too much time to adjust to it because you might play a high caliber Yoshi yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot of very optimal things for Yoshimitsu to do after he gets knockdowns and wall combos and things like that. That there's they're known, and that's those things are on their mind. So yeah, I agree with you on that because you say he knows how to tech correctly in the wall combo situation. That's probably due to him not only having the practice of of being put in the situation a lot, but also he is able to put that into place where it's not just he doesn't just muscle memory, he analyzes and doesn't just assume, he's looking at the screen and really and he knows the options that have the possibility of coming. And yeah, if you know what your best risk reward options are against Yoshimitsu, I totally agree. It's very, very difficult for the Yoshimitsu player to get to keep you open and to keep you guessing because of those really optimal things that you can do in a lot of those situations, even though the character has such a big kit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like the thing is with Yoshi, and a lot of people try to tell me this is that like Um, they always say when I say, "Well, you know when you know the matchup," but like I'll say that and then I'll add on to it and I'll say that, well, the thing is with Yoshi is that you only have to know specific big things. Like knowing to dick jab while standing 1-2, down back 2, for example, on both options. And being able to do that on reaction is very huge. Because a lot of Yoshis, I would say majority, use one or two of those strings a lot. And even though it doesn't do very much damage, because that's what a lot of people like to think, it nullifies the gimmick 85%. Like, and then it becomes a mix up after that point. But still, the amount of options you limit is why you want to go for that. Because then you just have to think way too much if you're trying to duck and launch him consistently. And then you have to deal with different mix ups. And, it gets very convoluted very quickly when you start deciding that you're going to deal with while standing 1-2 by ducking it.
Yeah, that's true. People will end up really betting the farm that they can twitch, duck, and launch in between the hits, and it can mean the difference between your life and not your life.
Yeah, exactly. Like some characters have options, like Raven and Brian. They have instant while standing 3, and Raven has instant while standing 2. And at the very least, if you do while standing 1-1 and spin, you get 1-1, and that's it. And if they guess right, or if they read you right, they get a launch.
Hmm.
So it's like things like that are like just really huge. I think in the matchup, it's just
Yeah,
knowing very big specific things,
and
and
not to mention
people
those
I don't really
characters
look
with
at
those
that.
really great counter hit tools, like those wall standing counter hit tools, like Brian, like Armor King, things like that. Really scary stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So, couple of fun questions here.
Okay.
You've been to a few tournaments lately. Has any tournament um blown you out of the water? Just been like, wow, this is just the best tournament ever. What's your favorite tournament that you've been to so far, Jeremiah?
Combo breaker.
What it do for you? What was it? Was it the venue size? Was it the crowd, the energy, the way that they are really focused towards the player base? Maybe because they're very Tekken focused. They had a lot of big Tekken events this year. What was it that you liked so much about Combo Breaker?
Being able to play casuals just 24/7 is very nice. The energy was good. it was nice to meet a lot of people, but I'd say it's just that thing that you able whenever pools end, like, you don't have to leave, or, like, it's not a set time where you have to leave to, the venue. It's like, "Oh,
Hmm.
you guys wanna stay here till 3 in the morning? Be my guest." It's
Yes.
up 24/7.
Love that. Love that. Especially when all you want to do is just hang out with your friends and play and play.
Yeah.
All right. One last fun question for you. If you could delete one character from the game, and don't talk about how people have a negative mindset and stuff. This is just for fun, okay? If you could take one character out of the game, which character would it be and why?
Um, it's Fakaram, honestly. Fakaram, I just think has way too much range and way too many good tools, and it just feels very annoying to play against that character. Like, I personally would just like them to normalize the character, but I mean, like, for example, if that didn't happen, then yeah, it would be Fakaram.
Hmm. Yeah. And there's that conversation of, well, if we normalized it, right, then it would be just like lot X other character or Y other character. But I think we can all agree that there are some down tuning that can be done, some even more down tunings that can be done. But we're not sure what's gonna happen. Everything's up in the air still. Who knows? Could end up with season 5 before we end up seeing Tekken 8.
Yeah,
Fingers crossed that doesn't happen, but that we'll be there in the trenches running that Yoshimitsu till we can't run it no more. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeremiah. I want to thank you again for giving your time and helping us, the players, get to know you and your mindset a little bit more. Do you have anything that you want to shout out or something like that at the end of this right here?
um, just shout outs to my friends, shout outs to Kaiser, shout outs to Bison, and shout outs to like a lot of these players coming up and like learning the game and just growing exponentially. It's uh, it's been quite something to watch, like seeing Dragon Slayer grow from where he was at one point to where he is now, and the guy is just super hungry. So, just shout outs to just don't know. There's just so many people, so many friends, but I just shout outs to everyone.
Word. Well, thank you once again for your time. I really appreciate you coming out and giving us a inside look at you, Faustian Jermanji. Thank you so much again, and hope to see you succeeding and get that first place at a major sometime soon, so that I can yell and lose all my vocal cords once again.
For sure.
Be easy, man.